We are on the 22nd mission of the third parak. So it says, Hu haya omer, he used to say, Kol shehachmaso meruba maisav, mimaisav, anyone whose wisdom is greater than his deeds, lama hu dome. What's he compared to? Right? Now we already did a Mishnah. We did 2 Mishnayot that said if a person's wisdom exceeds his deeds, his wisdom won't last. If a person's deeds exceed his wisdom, then his wisdom will last. So we've already talked about the general concept of why. Right? Same thing we saw in the Mishnah that said a person's wisdom his Yira Shemayim has to exceed his wisdom. Right? In order for your wisdom to last, one, you have to do something with it practically. You have to turn that wisdom into action. It's not about the collection of pretty intellectual ideas. It's about acting on those ideas, about changing and refining who you are. Lama hu dama, what's he compared to? Na'ilon, she'anafav merubin, v'sharasav mu'atin. Right? It's like a tree, a beautiful tree. Huge branches and lots of leaves and sways in the wind and no root system. Nothing holding it to the world. V'haruach bo'a v'koroso v'chofachto al ponav. And a wind comes and it lifts it up and it throws it down on its face. It trips it. The wind comes and blows down the tree. Now one thing I always found that's interesting is if I said, there's 2 aspects. There's Torah and there's deeds. Now you're going to paint a tree. You would say the Torah is your roots and the deeds are your leaves. Right? What do people see in the world? They see your actions. Right? And what roots you to earth? Your Torah. But he says a guy with lots of Torah, lots of Chachma, but no action. Right? Kol shehachmaso meruba mimaisav. Lots of chachma, but no action. He's like a tree with lots of leaves and nothing rooting him. It's the exact opposite of what you'd think. Right? And he gives you'll be like an isolated tree in an arid land. You won't see good when it comes. You'll dwell in parched soil in the wilderness, on salted land, uninhabited. You'll be like a tree in Riverside, right? It's just not going to make it. Right? But a person whose good deeds exceed his wisdom, what's he compared to? To a tree with very few branches, but whose roots are numerous. Right? In some ways, it seems like not as pretty of a tree, right? You had a tree with a few little spindly branches, and right, but it's rooted in the world, right? And it says, even if all the winds in the world come to blow against it, they can't budge it from its place. It says, and he shall be like a tree planted by waters towards the stream. It spreads its roots and anchors it, and it won't notice the heat's arrival, and its foliage shall always be fresh. In the year of drought it won't worry, and it'll never cease yielding fruit. So we're talking about Chachma, wisdom, connection to Hashem. Right? This whole parak is about how do you use physicality to serve the spiritual? How do you live in this world and become a holy person? Right? That's our underlying question. We saw it from the first Mishnah. This whole chapter has been on how do I live in a physical world as a spiritual creature? How do I use holiness to uplift and infuse physicality? So the first thing is he says, it's not about the pretty intellectual pictures that you can paint. Our idea of chachma, of wisdom, right, is not about acquiring lots of ideas and covering lots of pages and being out there as a big show. Look at me. I own the world. Look at what I've done in the world. He says it's about being anchored and rooted. Right? Then when we learn that the Greek approach to learning, right, the university approach to learning is about hearing fascinating ideas, hearing deep ideas, and acquiring tidbits of knowledge and a body of knowledge and creating, the Platonic ideal, right? To have this beautiful, intellectual, abstract, philosophical construct, right? I'm a philosopher king, right? I'm a well-rounded, well-spoken, eloquent, my chachma and my wisdom is out there for the world. He says that's not us. That's the guy, who's our Gadol Hador? Our Gadol Hador is not a guy who's got a crystal cathedral. He's not a guy who's publishing thousands of volumes of, self-help books. He's not an orator. He's a guy who lives in a simple little apartment, and he studies in a quiet back room in a shul. And if you want a practical, real answer, you send him a question, because he's got chachma, and he'll give you an answer. It's not about it's got a couple little scraggly branches, but you know what? On his branches, the leaves are fresh. And even in a drought, right, the foliage is there, and he doesn't worry. And his fruit is beautiful and sweet and precious and delicious. Because what we want is deeds. When you learn Torah, it's about how do you act. It's about what roots your ideas in reality is what you do with them. When you learn a concept of kindness, do you change the structure, the molecular structure of who you are to become a kind person? Right? When you learn about giving, do you change who you are and give? When you learn about integrity, it is not can you paint a beautiful word picture of integrity. It's can you be a guy who acts in a simple, right? I'm discussing with my wife, purposes of life. And so yesterday, a guy comes to the house, right? I get mushalachim all the time. He knocks on the door. We open the door. We invite him in. He sits on the couch. My daughter runs to get him a glass of water. I sit. We talk. We write him a check. And he looks at me and he says, you're not like other people. He says, no one ever offers you a drink. No one ever talks to you nicely. He says, they give me money, but no one talks to me nicely. He said, I've fallen on hard times. My life is very difficult. No one's nice to me. Right? And he gives me a hug and cries and leaves my house. And it's like, it tears you apart. It's like the guy is, he's our neighbor. It happens to be he lives in the valley, and he comes out here because he's embarrassed to collect in the valley because he doesn't want his friends to see that he's running out of money. The kid's got a couple of kids. It's like, I think I recognize him in who he is. Right? But people aren't nice to him. Like, everything we're learning, and your neighbor comes and needs, right? Think about how you would feel if you needed to go ask people to give you $10, right? To get enough money that you're going to be able to buy food for your kids for Shabbos. And your neighbors aren't kind to you? That's not why we're learning this. Right? It rips you apart. The whole purpose that we're learning this, that we're going through all this silly nonsense in a foreign language, is to become the kind of people who take other people's lives and needs and everything seriously. That's what holiness is. Holiness is a tree that's got lots of fancy ideas, but the first intellectual storm that comes to blow you over, you're lost. But if you're the simple folk, right? No show, but you walk the walk. And you act, right? You act on your ideas, and you act on your ideals, and this stuff is real to you, and it just changes the bones of how you do. It's not enough to learn about chesed and tzedakah and meiser and kindness. It has to be that when your neighbor comes and needs $10, you give him $10, and you give him a drink, and you treat him like a mensch, and you treat him like a guest, and you treat him like a friend, right? Because God forbid that should be you, right? And even if you're not worried it's going to be you, right? The whole idea of having a kahila is we're looking out after each other, right? It's deeds, right? See, we're a backwards people. That even in the most intellectual, we're the most intellectual people of the book. Everything is right. But ultimately, what are we shooting for? We're shooting for a simple guy who's all this philosophical stuff he's done doesn't show in his leaves. It shows in his roots. And he is tied to the world by action. He's tied to the world by, I'm going to be a nice guy. I'm going to be a good guy, right? I'm going to be a mensch. We saw in the Mishnah earlier. I'm going to be the kind of guy that people are pleased with me. Good people are pleased with me, so God will be pleased with me. I'm going to be the kind of, right? I want a straight path in life. I want to be honest and accurate. That's what I'm looking for. That's what you want for your kids, right? You don't want to be showy and big and rich. And you know what? Have sparse leaves. But be anchored by action to the world. So that's our Mishnah.